It has begun. Welcome to FilmDirt, everyone. Tonight I'm revisiting an old classic for me. I loved this movie back then, and I also loved the arcade game that it was based on. But has the movie held up after all this time? That's what I wanted to find out. This is, of course, Mortal Kombat, that came out in 1995. Now, this is a very curious experience for me back then. I don't even think I was on the internet. I had absolutely no idea this movie was even coming out. Even though I was a huge fan of the arcade games, I remember playing MK1 and 2 in my local arcade as a child and being actually quite captivated with them. And then suddenly, I think I was in our local city centre shopping probably, or skiving off school maybe, I see this poster outside our cinema and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I thought, what is this? Have they actually made a movie out of my favourite arcade game? Just seeing that poster out in the wild in front of my local cinema was a real eye-opener. So that evening I had to come back and watch it. I was there with a friend and I thought it was quite amazing. It was like the arcade game came to life and it was done properly. It wasn't so much as a comedy. It had good special effects and good visuals. It was like a proper movie. And in the subsequent years, and even up to present day, we see that this movie is mentioned in those films, or one of those films based on a video game that is actually good. It seems to be the benchmark. So tonight it was quite a pleasure actually revisiting it, because I haven't seen it for such a long time. And I have to say, it has held up. There are a few ropey parts that I'm going to go into, but let's forgive it. This is 1995. The internet was in its infancy, if at all. Computer-generated imagery was in its very early stages. And as far as I know, the Blu-ray release of this movie hasn't been recomposited or updated. It's been cleaned up slightly, it's still grainy in places. Unless I'm mistaken, I think it is the same movie we saw back in 95. So this stars Robin Shou, Christopher Lambert, Linden Ashby, Bridgette Wilson, and the great Cary-Hiroyuki, Tagawa, and loads of other names. Trevor Goddard I remember seeing once or twice, Talisa, Soto, and I see Frank Welker popped up here with a voice credit for Shao Kahn, who I forgot was even in this movie. So coverage of this film in 95 probably bypassed me. The only way I would know about movie releases was various magazines that would come out every month, and I think that was about it. So I do remember some rumours it was going to be starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Anyone that knows Mortal Kombat lore will know that the original arcade game was supposed to be based around him, that ended up not featuring Van Damme and instead becoming its own entity. And I often wonder, how would this movie have fared if it had featured Van Damme in the Johnny Cage part? Even though Linden Ashby, I think, was great, he had the right personality, I think. A very good Johnny Cage, because he had that kind of cheeky personality as a backstory of the arcade games. And I feel it was brought to life very well. Would Van Damme have done any better? I honestly don't know. He would have added some physicality to the part, of course. But I do feel a lot of the actors in this movie have trained for those fighting sequences to a very advanced standard. I think they've done very well, and it does look convincing, mostly. Robin Shou looks very highly skilled, completely believable. Christopher Lambert, not so much, but he was there as Raiden. He's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure here. Bridgette Wilson, I don't think she's a fighter, but her acting was great and completely belonged in this space. Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, I think, is a legend. I've seen him in so many films. Love that presence and that character he brings. Perfect for Shang Tsung. All in all, the cast are great. And also the fighting actually looks like the fists are connecting. Doesn't look like it's all, pantomime or theatrical. It actually looks like a proper fight, and I don't know who the choreographer was here, but there's some really good scenes and sequences Because if you recall, the arcade games were quite bloody, weren't they? And they were deemed to be a bit too excessive for young children, and there was always those legal issues, where there was in the UK anyway, on whether the game should be banned or given a higher certificate. So the movie does show a little bit of extreme violence at times. Not too much, but there's enough. It's more action rather than comedy, and that's good to see. And I must talk about the visuals. The visual effects, I think, are great. There's a few parts that are composited. There's some stuff going on in the sky, lots of moving clouds, and it does look kind of seamless. You remember the sequel to this film, Annihilation? The background plates to the foreground didn't look great at all, but the first one looked so much better, and a lot more care has been taken, maybe a bigger budget as well. Thailand looks great, and those temples, they look great as well. Everything looks like it's part of the Mortal Kombat universe. And this only reminds me of some of the rubbery effects, mainly the reptile character. The statue comes to life, and it looks digital. I think they could have done something with that, and that's a shame. Even at the time, that looked terrible. Maybe have a puppet, or just have a silhouette, something that's not so obvious. But here it looks like it's rainbow coloured, and really does stand out as being a poor effect. Granted, it's CG and it's 1995, but I feel they could have done something a bit more understated, just to work with the limitations of the lack of advanced technology they had. But all in all, I think it's great stuff. It's a story mostly lifted from the backstory of the arcade games. We've got the movie star who's getting a bad time in the press, and then Liu Kang colludes with Raiden to enter the tournament, and he meets all these other amazing characters in that journey. And also Scorpion and Sub-Zero. I know they've got a backstory in the games, and they look very deadly here. Sonya Blade is after Kano, along with her partner Jax, who isn't in the film long, and she gets drawn into the tournament as well. And all this time that's elapsed since, I think it's held up. I really enjoyed this. And it's hard to put your finger on why, because it's not so much of a time capsule. It's clearly a studio-made film, and there's a lot of special effects here that do make you cringe. But I think it's all set up, the whole setting, the whole mood of the film, all comes together. And of course, you can't beat that techno soundtrack, can you? They've done away with a lot of the scary music of the games and really favoured all this techno music, which takes you back to the 90s in the only way it can. Okay, for a score, I'm going to go high with 4.5. Being a fan of the arcade games, it was good to see such a good film follow that. This is more based on Mortal Kombat 2 that I recall. Just looking here, it came out in 93. Mortal Kombat 3 arcade game came out the same year as this. This seems more based on Mortal Kombat 2 with some of the brief additional characters shown. So, thanks for joining me for this little look back at Mortal Kombat. Next, I'm going to revisit its terrible sequel. I really hated this film, I remember when I first saw it. So I'm going to rewatch that and probably pick it apart. So join me back here in the next few days. Speak to you soon. All the best and take care.